Good morning. Welcome to Connect Daily Bread, where we acknowledge that man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Today's reading is in Luke chapter 22. Here we go. Now, the festival of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." "Where do you want us to prepare for it?" they asked. He replied, "As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters, and say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is the guest room where I may eat this Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, all furnished. Make preparations there." They left and found things just as Jesus had told them. So they prepared the Passover. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God." After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, "Take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes." And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine at the table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed, but woe to that man who betrays him." They began to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Jesus said to them, "Kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. You are those who have stood by me in my trials, and I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in the kingdom, and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." But he replied, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." Jesus answered, "I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you know me." Then Jesus asked them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?" "Nothing," they answered. He said to them, "But now if you have a purse, take it, and also if you have a bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It is written, 'And he was numbered with the transgressors.' And I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment." The disciples said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords." "That's enough," he replied. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer, he went back to the disciples. He found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation." While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour, when darkness reigns." Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance, and when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard, and had sat down together. Peter sat down with him. A servant girl seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him," but he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Men, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked him, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." So here in Luke 22, we see Jesus has the Last Supper with his disciples, and we see him explain what is about to take place and relay or institute the Lord's Supper. And he says, "This bread is my body, which is going to be broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And this fruit of the vine, that's my blood, which is going to be poured out for you." And so that's why at Connect, that's something that we're committed to doing each Sunday, as the pattern that we saw in the book of Acts that the early church did, to remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. We see up to the end, Jesus is still having to sort out this dispute about who's the greatest, and he lays out that in the kingdom things are flipped. That the one who would be greatest would be the one who serves, and he lays out that he was the model and the example of that he came and served, not to be served. And then he warns Peter that Satan had asked to sift all of them as wheat, but that he prayed for him so that his faith may not fail. And when he had turned back to strengthen his brothers, Peter is not buying this, says he's not going to deny him no matter what, ready to go to prison or to death. But Jesus knew what was going to come, and even in that, he plants the seed of hope when you've turned back. Strengthen your brothers. That his purposes for Peter were not going to be finished when he stumbled, and that's something that you and I can take to heart. Is God's grace covers all of that, and it is not to Jesus' surprise when we stumble and we mess up, but that was actually paid for on the cross, and he's not done with us. He gives us grace not to stay where we're at, but he gives us the grace to rise and go forward differently and impactful for him. And in the Mount of Olives, he's praying, "Lord, take this cup from me." And it's not just a random line that he throws out of "take this cup," but in the book of Daniel, there's talk about the cup of the Lord's wrath. Revelations has the same thing to say. And so he's talking about the wrath of God was about to be poured out upon him while he was on the cross. That which you and I and all of mankind deserved was about to be poured out on Jesus. And he's saying, "Man, if there's any other way, take this from me. But with surrender, yet not my will, yours be done." The disciples were unable to stay asleep during that time. He encouraged them to pray that they would not fall into temptation. And so that leads me to think that things could have been different that night had they prayed. And so that's something we can take to heart and apply, is recognize that our pathway to overcome temptation is through prayer, praying that God would give us the strength to do what we need to do. And then the trial begins, right? And so Jesus just lays out. He's not defending himself, but he just lays out. You're not going to answer if I ask you. But just know this: from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. And it's been decided at that point, right? They don't need to hear anything else. This is inevitable. It's going to take place, and it's going to happen. And so we'll pick up tomorrow in Luke chapter 23. Comment what stood out to you from today's reading. Love you guys. Have a good day.